and go. Well, I live in a town called the Earth City, big town, big and wild. You won't find a drop of water here, but a strange stream called the human river, human river. Mean and cold, you may shine brighter, but you sure ain't gold. Let me tell you, folks ain't taking a bath for years. Some say I smell foul, but I'd rather smell like old buddy boy than plunge myself in the muddy water, human river. Mean and cold, you may shine brighter, but sure ain't gold. Let me tell you, man, it ain't no blessed river. God never troubled that troubled water. Alive you come, drown you go. So my dear friend, you better stay on shore. Human river, mean and cold, you may shine brighter, but sure ain't gold. Stay for a while, hear what I say. All you find over there is a grave. Fish is dying, poison starving. Empty bottles can't give a drink. Human river, mean and cold. You may shine brighter, but you sure ain't gold. Sell your mind, don't you soak your soul. You might discover what has been untold. In the bottom of the river there's a mighty big hole. Not sure as you're born, it won't make you whole. Human river, mean and cold. You may shine brighter, but sure ain't gold. Don't sell your mind, don't you soak your soul. You might discover what has been untold. In the bottom of the river there's a mighty big hole. As sure as you're born, I wanna make you whole. Human river, mean and cold. You may shine brighter, but sure ain't gold. Why don't you wait in the water? Wait in the water, children, wait in the water. You know that God's gonna trouble the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Why don't you wait in the water? Wait in the water, children, wait in the water. You know that God's gonna trouble the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Oh, well, the first step I made in Jordan, the water came to my feet. Well, the second step I made in Jordan, you know the water came to my knees. Great God, you know I took another step down in Jordan, and then the water came to my hip, Lord. Well, I saw a man on the other side that wasn't making up my dying bed, singing, why don't you wait? You better wait in the water, singing away in the water, children, wait in the water. You know that God's gonna trouble the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Well, look at a bando dressed in.
Good morning. How's it going?
It's going.
Good morning.
Good morning. It's good to see
Good
you all.
morning.
Hey, Robert. We're having a little computer difficulty here. Angela's having a hard time getting on, so we have to improvise on this side. Let's see. Well, how has y'all's week been?
Just like the past 30 weeks.
Yeah, we're in month 7. So I posted earlier. I mean, this is sort of what we're going to talk a little bit about today. I've been reading about studies of long-term space flight, and people being trapped in a container for a year and a half on their way to Mars or whatever, and sort of what NASA's thinking about the kinds of things they'll need to do so that the astronauts arrive safely without killing each other.
I'm not even sure our family could do that. I don't want long-term space flight until they've got something as big as the Enterprise to fly in.
Right, something a little more. Well, so that was actually one of the things they were talking about, is that people need more space to, survive interpersonally on these long trips. So
now Joe's talking about or looking at buying a camper trailer so that we can do some traveling.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea, to be honest, of being shut up with anybody in a 22-foot long space is enough. It's like chalk or fingernails on a chalkboard.
Well, the advantage is you can always stop and go for a walk. Space Lab, not space. That's Space Lab is old, but in internet, what is it? International Space Station, ISS. There's no Love's County store where you can stop and go in for snacks or something.
How's Kira doing, Megan?
Oh yeah, our little space station. Honestly, she's fine. The day after, it's like she forgot about it. They gave her 6 stitches. Sort of, which eye is it? Left eye, over her left eye. And I got to watch them do that, which was interesting.
Wow.
Yeah. So they wound up giving her something to make her sort of loopy. So she was totally calm And now it's like it doesn't happen. It hasn't happened. She's honestly even more toddlery now than she was after, but was before, because now she's fully mobile on her leg, and she's got opinions about the world.
When our grandson was 5, I got a call from the school he was at saying he had taken a bad fall and they thought he had broken his arm.
Oh.
And they couldn't get in touch with his mother. And so I had to go get him and take him to Children's Hospital. And he was in so much pain. And they came after they determined it was broke. They came in and gave him a shot of something. I'm not even sure what it was, Demerol or something, to relax him and take some of the pain away. He laid there for 2 or 3 minutes and he went, I really like that medicine.
So the stuff they gave Kira, well, she has this thing about Band-Aids. Band-Aids freak her out. And
really?
I think it's because of shots. Like, she associates them with shots because she hasn't really had that many reasons to have one other than that. So when they put her little leg band on, she freaked out because she thought that was a Band-Aid. She kept trying to pull it off. The stuff they gave her was like a nasal spray or something. I don't know I can't remember what it was, but they said, okay, press the call button when you can tell she's kind of loopy. And how I could tell she was super loopy was when she looked down at her little leg band and said, hello, Band-Aid.
Oh, awesome.
It was great. So
Wow.
when they were actually stitching her up, she was sort of lying between my legs on the little like ER bed, and the other people were at the end of the bed. And they recommended that I show her like some little videos that she likes, little nursery rhyme videos. And like, she seriously was so focused on them that like when the lady's hand got in the way, she like pushed it out of the way. So
Wow.
she's a trooper.
Shit, Children's. You're in Huntsville.
Right. The pediatric ER in Huntsville, which was amazing, by the way. They did temperature testing at the door, and there was basically nobody there at that time on a Sunday morning. So.
And then I can connect.
That was nice.
Good morning, Tony.
Hey, how's it going?
There we go. And
About like always.
I think, let's see, how do I get to resume?
Dave's working on his self-talk.
Chrome is up.
Oh, what's our meeting ID? Hi, friends. Sorry, we're having a little technical issues on our side. Okay, maybe you can get to it from there. Okay. Sorry, one of our computers is not working, so we're having to adjust a little bit on this side. So we're just, how are the rest of you doing? How's your week been?
Long, really long.
This week has been a long month.
Yeah, it could have been a year. But I have found this cute little old lady on TikTok that's bringing me all types of joy, named Nadine. So
awesome. What is she doing?
She is ripping Republicans, in particular Trump. She's a little old white lady from Tennessee, and she is letting them have it. It is hilarious.
Nadine, I'll have to look up Nadine.
I'll see the video. I actually did a duet video, but she is hilarious. And then Julie Noki did another video last week.
Oh, she's hilarious too. You mean, was it a time travel video?
Yes. Oh, she's talking herself from October 8th to herself in June.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like we're all living in that state. She captures it so well.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started. We have a couple little, like I said, we're having some technical difficulties over on this side. Trying to get Angela connected because of our computer issues. We're going to have two Old Testament readings, Paula, but they're very short. So one's the story of Jonathan and David, and the other is Ecclesiastes. And I wrote the liturgy based on Common Prayer. So just a caveat, there may be some typos because I'm the only one who's looked at it so far. So we'll go ahead and get started.
I find that I also correct other people's typos in my mind, so it's like I can proofread my stuff.
Yeah. All right. So here we go. Ready when you all
are. Before Dietrich Bonhoeffer became a martyr, he helped start an underground seminary in 1935 at Finkenwald for the confessing church, Lutherans who resisted Nazism. The seminary operated as an international community for 2 years until the Gestapo shut it down in 1937. Bonhoeffer wrote the book Life Together while at Finkenwald to help shape the community. He wrote, "The prisoner, the sick, the Christian living in the diaspora recognizes in the nearness of a fellow Christian, a physical sign of gracious presence of the triune God. In their loneliness, both the visitor and the one visited recognize in each other the Christ who is presented in the body. They receive and meet each other as one meets the Lord in reverence, humility, and joy. O Lord, let my soul rise up to meet you.
As the day rises to meet the sun.
Glory to the Creator and the Redeemer and to the Sustainer.
As it was in the beginning, is now, and will be forever. Amen.
Come, let us bow down and bend the knee. Let us kneel before the Lord our Maker.
You are fearfully and wonderfully made, O God. All your works are wonderful.
It was you who formed me. It was you who formed my inward parts.
You knit me together in my mother's womb.
I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made.
Wonderful are your works, that I know very well.
My frame is not hidden from you when I was being made in secret.
Intricately woven in the depths of the earth.
Your eyes beheld my uniform substance.
In your book were written all the days that were formed for me, when none of them as yet existed.
How weighty to me are your thoughts, O God.
How vast is the sum of them.
I try to count them. They are more than the sand.
I come to the end. I am still with you. We are fearfully and wonderfully made, O God. All your works are wonderful.
1 Samuel 18, 1 through 5. When David had finished speaking to Saul, the soul of Jonathan was bound to the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own soul. Saul took him that day and would not let him return to his father's house. Then Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as his own soul. Jonathan stripped himself of the robe he was wearing and gave it to David, and his armor, and even his sword, and his bow, and his belt. David went out and was successful wherever Saul sent him. As a result, Saul set him over the army, and all the people, even the servants of Saul, approved. Ecclesiastes 4, 9 through 12. Two are better than one, because they have a good reward for their toil. For if they fall, one will lift up the other. But woe to the one who is alone and falls and does not have another to help. Again, if two lie together, they keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? And though one might prevail against another, two will withstand one. A threefold cord is not quickly broken.
John 17, 20 through 26. I ask not only on behalf of these, but also on behalf of those who will believe in me through their word, that they may all be one, as you, Father, are in me, and I am in you, may they also be in us, so that the world may believe that you have sent me. The glory that you have given me, I have given them, so that they may be one, as we are one. I in them, and you in me, that they may become completely one, so that the world may know that you have sent me, and have loved them even as you have loved me. Father, I desire that all those also whom you have given me may be with me where I am, to see my glory, which you have given me because you loved me before the foundation of the world. Righteous Father, the world does not know you, but I know you, and these know that you have sent me. I made your name known to them, and I will make it known, so that the love with which you have loved me may be in them, and I in them. The word of God for the people of God.
Thanks be to God. We are fearfully and wonderfully made, O God. All your works are wonderful.
Dietrich Bonhoeffer wrote, "Those who love their dream of Christian community more than the Christian community itself become destroyers of that community, even though their personal intentions may be ever so honest, earnest, and sacrificial." Amen.
Thank you all. So I think, how are you doing over there, Angela? Are you able to be visible? There you are.
I'm visible. I think we're okay.
Okay. So Angela, yay. Angela will be our prayer coordinator, and I'll get us started. And if you are on Zoom, you can either speak a prayer concern or type it in the chat. If you are watching on Facebook or YouTube, if you would like to lift up a prayer concern, simply
Prayer concern.
enter it into the comments, and we have Leo will find it and Angela will read it, and so we can all, as a community, pray together. And then we will finish with an inclusive version of the Lord's Prayer. So let's go to God in prayer. Creator and sustainer, God, we give you thanks that you bring us into being and you keep us alive with breath and blood, with food, with relationships. All good things come from you. We give you thanks also for time to be together, even virtually, in this unique time in human history. We ask that you right the wrongs of the world, that you heal the brokenness in us individually and in our society, in systems, in governments, in institutions. Help us to relate to each other the way you intended us to. Make love something that becomes true in us, that changes ourselves and changes the world, that brings about peace with justice. We lift up to you people, individuals in our lives about whom we are concerned. We also lift up to you world situations, and we lift up to you ourselves. And I invite you to share your prayer concerns.
We're asked to pray for 305 8th Street residents and staff, and also praise that Jeff Lawson, who had COVID-19, is recovering very well.
Lord, hear our prayer.
For resilience and strength.
Lord, hear our prayer.
Praise for Kira's continued healing.
Lord, hear our prayer.
For Flo, who has COVID, and for Jason, who has COVID.
Lord, hear our prayer.
I cannot see any comments in the chat. So if there's anything in the chat, I would appreciate someone else reading.
There isn't anything that I see yet.
Okay, thank you.
Thanksgiving for the rain and for the change of seasons.
Lord, hear our prayer.
For our Zoom with all of its frustration so that we can communicate with family and friends.
Lord, hear our prayer.
God, you hear the prayer of our mouths and the prayer of our hearts. You hear the prayers that we don't really know how to pray. We give you thanks that you hear and that you answer. And we join Jesus in the prayer that he taught us to pray. Holy One, our Mother and Father, let your name be revered. Let your kingdom come. Let your will be done on earth as it is in the heavens. Give us today the bread we need for today, and forgive our sins as we forgive those who sin against us. Save us from the time of trial, and deliver us from evil. For yours is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory for now and forever. Amen. So thank you all for being here today. It's good to see your faces again. I want to start by reading one of my favorite passages from Dietrich Bonhoeffer's writings. We read a little bit about Bonhoeffer just earlier, and I was going to, here we go. I think I can share my screen again this way. Well, okay, so that's not actually going to work. For some reason, Kindle's not playing nicely. So I'm just going to read this because I think it's an important piece. Bonhoeffer wrote this book called Life Together, and it's about his community at Finkenwald and the seminary, the Christian community they were creating. And he has two chapters. One is called The Day Together, and then he has another chapter called The Day Alone. And in his idea of Christian community, people would spend part of the day in silent meditation, and they would have other times where they came together for worship. And this was part of their daily practice. And one of the passages that really hits me pretty square is he has this saying, and it's split up. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but he said, "Whoever cannot be alone should beware of community. Whoever cannot be alone should beware of community." He said, "Such people will do only harm to themselves and the community." And then later on, in a paragraph later, he says, "But the reverse is also true. Whoever cannot stand being in community should beware of being alone." So whoever cannot stand being in community should be aware of being alone. And I think he really hits at part of the heart of what it means to be human. We are social creatures. We are meant to be together. And too much togetherness drives us crazy. So we've been talking about mental health. The first Sunday I said we need to focus on mental wellness instead of just mental illness, recognizing that we are all on a continuum of mental health. We all need help sometime. And the next Sunday we talked about trauma and healing. Last Sunday we talked about anxiety. And today I wanted to talk about relationships because it's easy for us to think that mental health is all about what's up here in our heads, but mental health is also about the space between us. The unique thing about human beings is that we have this capacity to share our internal world with each other. We can use our relationships to help us survive, to change our environment. In fact, that's kind of one of our human superpowers. Besides the ability to sweat and run for long distances, we can share thoughts between each other. We can share our subjective world, what it's like to be me. I can share that with you, and you can share that with me. We can create relationships that way. I'm reminded Margaret Mead said that the first archaeological evidence of human civilization was about 15,000 years ago. And it was a healed femur, the thigh bone. It's the longest bone in the human body. And with other animals, if your femur's broken, you're dead. But this bone was healed. And the idea was that in order for a human femur to heal, there had to have been a community of people looking out for the person who was injured, feeding them, protecting them until they were able to return to health, to helping the community survive. And so the sign of human civilization, of what we think of as being human, was this capacity for us to help each other heal. And obviously, if we're talking about mental health, I mean, I think that's a tremendous thing. One of our unique capacities is the ability to help each other heal and to help each other survive. Now, of course, we're in the midst of something that is testing our communities, that's testing our relationships. And it has been, we have to acknowledge, it's extremely stressful. There's a lot of negatives. There's also some surprising positives, because there's hardly anything that happens that doesn't have mixed blessing in it. For some people, it's been a blessing to have time at home with family. They've reconnected with things they enjoyed doing, with gardening, with having time with their family. For others, it has been isolating and painful. There are increasing levels of domestic violence because people can't get away from each other. In order to prepare for this, I was looking at some research on what NASA has done, thinking about long-term space missions, like going to Mars, research that's been done on the International Space Station. And one of the articles I was looking at talked about, in addition to screening people before they ever put them in these tight boxes, they want to screen out any serious pathology, any serious mental problems. They also did a lot of training. So they briefing them, doing team building, getting them ready to spend this extended period alone together on this long trip. And that during the mission, they needed support, both from experts on the ground and the crew members, that they had to be aware of interpersonal problems, to talk a lot about how they were relating to each other, to figure out how they were going to deal with their negative emotions for a year and a half while they're in this rocket on the way to Mars. Coming up with strategies, both individually and as a team, so that they could tolerate each other for that long. Being aware that they might have different needs for leisure time and alone time and together time. And then finally, at the end of the mission, time for whatever readjustment they needed. So I think about like all that energy. I mean, if you're going to have a successful mission to Mars, there was a lot packed into the front end of that. There was a lot invested. I mean, the whole idea is there's a lot invested in the actual mission, and then there's a recovery time. And most of us have been thrown into this experiment without a lot of prep time, with probably insufficient support time, and we don't even know what the heck the readjustment period is going to be. So like, I mean, I want to point out, NASA knows this is important. and they've poured lots of money into this kind of research. So we acknowledge relationships can be both a source of stress and a source for healing from stress. They can benefit our mental health and our personal growth. They can also cause harm and impede our personal growth. And in talking to you all about this is one of those places where I'm very conscious of the burden of being a preacher, because I bring up a topic that I have to talk about in front of my family. Who knows what a hypocrite I am. So I have this clever plan, which is that I'm not going to tell you how to get through this, because I'm going to invite you to share in dialogue with some of our experts. I do want to bring up a couple experts. John Gottman, as y'all know, I quote John Gottman a lot. He's a research psychologist who studied marriage relationships, but he's also looked at parenting and other sorts of things. One of my favorite sayings from his comes from when he's talking to couples who've just had a new baby, which is one of the most stressful events in a couple's life. And this phrase he uses has become something I've really hung on to in this time of COVID, which is, we are all in the same soup. Like, all of us are in the same soup. You're probably not functioning at the top of your game right now, because the preconditions for you to be your usual charming self, I'm borrowing that from my dad, are not being met. So when you find yourself getting sick of the people that you have to deal with, it's important to remember that your fuse is short and their fuse is also probably short, and they're not functioning at the top of their game either. So we are all in the same soup. That's one of the first things to remember in the midst of this pandemic. Another mantra that I got from Gottman is, everyone is their own set of problems. Like, when you marry someone, you marry a set of problems. When you have a friend, you are friends with a set of problems. Everyone has their own set of problems. And whatever grates on you about another person is simply the problem that you've happened to find with that person. And if you were matched with anyone else in the world, you're going to find a different set of problems, but you're definitely going to find the problems. And it probably wouldn't even take 7 months for you to figure out what really gets on your nerves about them either. You probably wouldn't have to be put in a rocket ship with them on a mission to Mars before you know what about this other person needs to be fixed. And it's easy to see, right? And frequently what grates on us most is what bothers us about ourselves, but everyone is their own set of problems. Another principle that Gottman talks about a lot that I've learned to lean on is, harsh startups lead to harsh endings. So when you have something you want to talk to someone about, a harsh startup means it's probably not going to end gently. If you want a gentle ending, you need a gentle startup. So rather than starting off by criticizing somebody, it's important to say, there's a problem I'd like us to discuss. And then to begin talking about your whatever complaint you have. One other strategy I think is important for dealing with this pandemic is to intentionally spend times remembering the good times you've had with someone before the pandemic, or remember a tough time that you made it through in the past. Think about details of that experience. What was good about that experience? What did you do well then? What good feelings did you have with this person in the past? And dwell on that. And then in the midst of this situation, to dwell on those moments of peace. So when you are laughing together, really take time to enjoy the laughter. When you're smelling the new fall morning air, really enjoy those deep breaths, because those are the things that make our lives matter and make them easier together. So I could keep listing things that I think are important to do to ease our relationships in this time of pandemic. But I don't want to just give you a laundry list, because that comes off as just hearing, be nice to each other, which is fine, but not terribly helpful in the midst of this situation. So I think what will be the most helpful is what you can share about your own strategies for handling relationship stress during this time. One last thing I need to say, of course, is that if you or someone you know is in a domestic violence situation or in an intolerable emotional situation, please reach out and seek help. Global stress is super high. People have a harder time getting away from each other and finding peace. So please don't be ashamed to reach out if you or someone you know is having difficulty in a relationship. I know that especially I am deeply concerned for young people. Yesterday was coming out day. I'm deeply concerned for young LGBTQ folks who are spending long times with families who are not accepting. So if there's any way that you can connect those young people to help, please facilitate that. I'm going to shut up for a minute though, because again, I don't want to either come off as an expert or to just talk about be nice to each other. I would like to hear anything that you have found particularly useful to remember or to practice during this time of relationship stress.
You reminded me of an acronym. I don't know if you can hear me. Okay. So the acronym, and I've changed the way this is described because I think it's more simple to understand. Acronyms are useful. You can carry them around in your head, but the acronym is HEAL, HEAL. I just love the acronym. First of all, the H represents have a positive experience. And what that means is be on the lookout for a positive experience. Now, it's easy to recognize when you're awestruck. And certainly those are pretty easy to hang on to often, because we'll spend some time reflecting on it, feeling it, maybe talking about it with other people. And that's fine. We don't always have awe. We're not always awestruck, but as you go through the day, you look for those positive experiences, and they can be pretty small. You were talking, Dave, about remembering. That's another thing we can do. We can remember something about the person that we're on this journey to Mars with, and evoke a positive emotion. The second part really has to do with expanding it. That is to stay with it for a longer period of time. We tend not to do that, as you walk out in the yard, maybe in your backyard, and you see, I don't know if it's Angela, she sees a spider, and it's like, whoa, look at this, and there's that positive moment, and she'll stay with it because she examines it. I didn't mean to pick on you, Angela. It just happened. But you see this longer period of time, and the idea is hang on to the experience for 8, 10, 30 seconds, some period of time, and then amplify it. What does it mean? So you bring the meaning to that event. So all of this, if you can make it last longer, if you can make it stand out, recognize maybe it's a lot different from some other things that you've noticed. Anything that you can do like that helps create new neural pathways. Now the L, I usually don't talk about that unless we're trying to change something, but the L is for link. If you're trying to feel better about something, I don't know, maybe this is pretty easy to think about. So if you're trying to feel better about your child or your spouse or your grandfather or something, you would link the positive experience with the thought of that individual, something that you want to feel better about. And this is really just taking advantage of association. So we're trying to associate some positive emotion with something that we would like to improve. The whole idea here, though, is it's easy to pay attention to the things that are negative. That's how we're wired for to be able to live. The harder part is to keep in mind those things that are positive. And if we do that, then it makes us more resilient. And you can actually see the evidence of that as people have the discipline to work on it. They create new neural pathways, and they're more resilient to stresses. I just went on and on, didn't I?
No, that's super. Thank you. I love the HEAL acronym. Absolutely. And Angela has put that in the chat for the folks in Zoom. Thank you for that. Other responses, strategies that you use for dealing with relationship stress, and you don't have to out anybody or designate somebody. And speaking of outing, Tony said that coming out day is today. I thought it was yesterday, but thank you for that. Today is National Coming Out Day. Other strategies for dealing with relationship stress?
I don't know if this is like dealing with relationship stress in particular, but one thing I noticed early on, this was like work related, was the fact that, when things aren't right pre-apocalypse, during the apocalypse, they really fall apart. I had some coworkers who were not really performing at the level that they should have been performing at. And once COVID hit, all of these infirmities began to be exposed.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times, especially with relationships during this particular time, there may have been things that people were just kind of like, oh, I'll just ignore it. Or, oh, we've talked about that. We're just going to table it. And then you stuck with this person for 6 months and it's like, I just want to strangle them.
Right.
So don't strangle people. But also know when the time is, when it's time to take a step back. Mm-hmm. It's one of those things where one of my friends, she's very contemplative, but she said, even when the angel appeared to Mary and told her, that she was going to give birth to Jesus, the Bible says Mary pondered these things. She didn't react. She just kind of pondered it. Mm-hmm. So I think sometimes we have to take a step back and ponder things that are causing us stress or that may cause us stress, because if we react on it too fast, could you imagine Mary go, hey, I'm going to be the mother of God? You kind of end up setting yourself up for failure. So, just knowing when it's time to let's take a step back and breathe.
No, I think absolutely. Yeah. I think so the two things you talked about, you said that before pre-COVID, if things were rough, then during COVID, it's like 10 times whatever's amplified. I think that's very true.
Which is why it's important to, to kind of deal with problems as they come, because if you don't, they just kind of pile up.
That's a great point. Yeah.
Hard to try to figure out how to do it the right way.
Yeah. So that reminded me that one of the things Gottman talks about is that the couples that complained to each other were more likely to stay together. And he distinguished between complaints and criticism. But if you feel comfortable enough, if you trust someone enough to bring up a problem and discuss it, that's probably a sign of a good relationship. Whereas if you're tiptoeing around and ignoring something or hoping it goes away, it's probably going to you're just delaying building up stress. And the other thing you said was about pondering, waiting, interrupting whatever your reaction is going to be. I think that's super important right now. We all need about 30 more seconds to deal with stuff in our heightened level. Yeah. Thank you. Others?
Ian has a comment. He says that HEAL acronym puts these fun college relationships here, with a little positive past to refer to, and any interactions being pretty short, it's hard to do these hill steps.
That's right on. Yeah, Ian, you're in the spaceship right now. I hear you.
I just want to comment, talking about the sort of science fiction elements of this, the traveling to Mars and all that. This is one of my favorite science fiction or horror genres, is like that relational horror, because there's really nothing worse than just sort of getting this off feeling about a person that you're interacting with. And I feel like it's it's really interesting to embrace the sort of evolutionary concept that we're sort of built to find people that are going to help us keep going, help us survive in the world in more than one sense. We just watched the new Charlie Kaufman film last night on Netflix. What's it called? I'm Thinking of Ending Things is the name of the movie. And it's basically about like human relationships. So not exactly super uplifting, but it's yeah. I don't understand it any better than anybody else.
And those relationships that have helped us survive in the past have been thinned out during this political season too. I've lost Facebook friends. The ones I've lost have been no big deal. The ones that have really hurt, though, have been people I had a lot of respect for and dearly loved, who have shown their true colors and are still doing it. And I don't particularly want to be in relationship with them anymore. So it makes the relationships that you have even more important than what they were a year ago.
Yeah.
Hey, Paula, this is Clark. May I follow up on that?
Go, Clark.
So I have used Facebook primarily as a way to keep up with people because I've lived all over the Southeast. But about 2 months ago, Paula, I quit going on there because I know that a lot of people that I'm friends with disagree with me on a lot of things. And I just don't want to lose the friendship because of the disagreements. Now, they're not like certain hard baked in concepts that I find I can't tolerate, but just other smaller things. So I suggest that you just put that Facebook away. It's really helped me the last 2 months.
Thank you for that, Clark. I think one of the things, just piggybacking on Megan, what you brought up first and continuing to the others, C.S. Lewis talks about how, and I think it's an interesting idea, Sartre said that hell is other people. And then C.S. Lewis also said, but heaven's other people too. So, I mean, part of this whole idea, and I love Lewis's concept, is that part of salvation is this notion about how we relate to other people, whether we think of other people like this person's bringing hell into my life, or this person is bringing healing and heaven into my life. And I mean, I think it's interesting. A lot of it has to do with how we choose to interact with people too. Yeah, thank you for that. Other comments, strategies for how you're handling relationship stress, or how you found helpful?
I think it's really important for people to understand that they are not identical with their mental states. I know in our house, when there's conflict, we generally benefit from being able to look at it and say, oh, wow, that was a conflict. Well, it is a pandemic. I'm not surprised we had a conflict about that. And then you move on from there, instead of being like, well, I guess we hate each other now.
That's a great point. I think that's fantastic. Yeah. I think there's a lot to that, because oftentimes we get wrapped up in our own feeling so much. I mean, even think about the way we say I'm angry. Instead of I have anger or I'm experiencing anger. Anyway, I appreciate that. Yeah.
I want to go back to Paula's comment. I told y'all I lost a lot of high school friends back in 2008, shared a few more in 12, got rid of like 90% of them in 16. And over the last couple of months, like the majority of my white classmates, I just have blocked and just got done away with it. There's a difference between like having a difference of opinion, but I can't have a difference of opinion on hate. That's not a difference of opinion. That's a fundamental problem to have that we can't.
Did we lose Tony?
Did you lose me? What about now?
Just for a minute.
I hear you, Tony.
Yeah, that's a fundamental problem that we have that we can't. There's an impasse. Like there's no getting around that. It's kind of like having a cancer, and what you do with that cancer, you excise it from your body. You just can't do it. And there are no friendships that I find are that important for me to experience mental distress because you're a bigot, just because we were cool in high school. Like I'm done. I'm done. I don't need that type of negativity in my life. So, Paula, I totally get you on that.
There's a confidential comment if somebody wants to read it.
I'll deal with that because it was a question about the liturgy. So the question is about why I chose the psalm that I did for the reading, because there is a verse in there that has sometimes been used to used by anti-abortion folks. Specifically, it was you who formed my inward parts, you knit me together in my mother's womb, etc. I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. I know that very well. And the reason I chose that is that psalm has been kind of a theme that we've used in a couple of Sundays. I've used little pieces of it as we've gone. For me, that's not an anti-abortion psalm, and I apologize if it was triggering for folks because it does get used by the right wing frequently. The way I understand that is we are fearfully and wonderfully made, and specifically where it says, "Wonderful are your works, that I know very well." I'm one of your works, and for me that's an important piece of talking about mental health and talking about relationships. That especially as we get toward the end of that. I come to the end of my life, I'm still with you. So the emphasis is on the presence of God through everything. And I don't want to get sidetracked on the abortion issue too much because I do have some very specific thoughts about that. But I think the important part of that, and I don't want the right wing to run away with this psalm. I think it's important for us to affirm that God is with us and knows us intimately, and that mentally, physically, everything else, that we are fearfully and wonderfully made. So thank you for the question. I appreciate that. And again, if I use that thoughtlessly, it did occur to me, but my emphasis is on, I don't want the right wing to own the Bible. So.
It's interesting. I was picking up breakfast for the kids, and I was listening to NPR. And of course, with this being National Coming Out Day, they have people telling their coming out stories. And there's a guy who was talking about his, relationship with the church and how, raised in the church, he had his favorite hymns, all that. But once he realized he was gay, for his mental health, he had to separate from that environment because of the things that were taught. Mm-hmm. And you can take just about any verse in the Bible and make it say what you want to say. Mm-hmm. And that's what the right has done, like to the Bible itself. Again, these are the people who claim to be like the closest people to God, yet they do absolutely nothing that God asks us to do. Feed the poor, heal the sick, and so like back to the mental health part, if there are a lot of people who are in these almost abusive relationships with religion. You go to these churches and they tell you you're nothing. They tell you you're going to hell just for breathing, and again, those are the things that you have to get rid of. Those are the cancers that we have to get rid of. But I think as liberals, we do have to do something more to take back control of what the word says, because we've just given it over to them. And like, well, we can't talk about religion because we might offend somebody. Well, the way that they've been talking about religion, of course it's offensive. I mean, it is absolutely offensive. But that's not the way that we talk about it, in our community. Sure. It's not from an offensive standpoint.
Yeah, I thank you for that. And I think it's important, again, to affirm, especially those who are coming out, like if this is the way you're made, live into your truth. This is who, like, God knows who you are. You don't have to hide who you are.
And I thank you for that. When you met me, you know where I was with the church, and had it not been for you, I probably would have still been in that same spot. But that's because I got some better teaching from somebody who knew better.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Go
ahead, Teresa.
One thing that about social media and Facebook friends and all of this, that it's important to remember, we're very reliant on these technologies right now because we are isolated. But there are things about the way that social media is structured, and we've talked about it, that are people don't want to hear stories about somebody who's having a good day and baking bread and gardening. I mean, that's great that you have fun, Dave, but like, you couldn't write a story about that because it's boring. It's not that it's not wonderful. It's just not got that drama that grabs us. And social media and advertising and everything like that is based on creating problems and outraging us and basically hacking our emotional responses. So being mindful of that, like, even, I know not everybody is going to be able to give up Facebook, but being mindful of that, and being mindful of when you're being manipulated into a conversation, and when you're being it's not really tricked, but these conversations, a lot of times the way they go, all they do is reinforce both sides. Just no matter what the conversation is, everybody just gets more entrenched. Just the fact that they've reinforced that they've made their argument, even if their argument is you're a poo-poo head, that's enough for them to be like, ooh, I told them they're a poo-poo head. And like, then you feel good about yourself. And then you go, it's not a really good feeling. You're really pissed and everything. But just understanding that that's what's happening can help you to decide which of those interactions to have. Like Tony just said something about just because we were cool in high school. I wasn't cool with any of the people that I'm friends with in high school. I've actually felt like they've gotten better. That's a really good thing for you to have said, Tony, because I remember that, like, a lot of these people weren't all that cool in high school either. And like, I have way more friends that I would naturally have. And we have those notifications telling us we've got to check it right now. We don't have to check it right now. We can turn the phone off for a few hours and do something else. And it's okay to do that. And we need to give ourselves permission to do that. And we need to quit yelling at each other about, oh, well, you missed this news article, or you're focusing on the wrong thing, or whatever, because, oh my gosh, there's enough to focus on. Like, we can all just freaking chill just a little bit.
I just want to, I really appreciate what you said. And I think, you pointed out, this is them hacking us. It's like the opposite of the heal concept. It's in order to make money, I'm going to get you to focus on your anger and frustration, and that generates a bottom line for me. The longer your eyes are engaged on my page, the more money I make. And so I'm going to hack. Yeah, go ahead.
The other thing, Teresa, is that, everybody engages with social media differently. Usually I just want to put something up and leave. I don't really care about what people say about it for real until people just like get all out of character. But I really cultivate my Facebook page. Like when I find a weed growing in there, I pluck it out. I don't need to make this big announcement like I'm unfriending 30 people. No, if I see a weed, I'm going to pluck it out, because that weed is going to hinder my growth. And people don't understand that the other thing about this, and I tell people about social media about this all the time, if I unfriend you on Facebook, it doesn't necessarily mean that I don't like you or we're not friends. It's that I don't want to hear every thought that you got to say every 6 minutes. I don't need to hear that. I don't need to hear that you made a cup of coffee. I don't care about that. I also don't need to hear that you burned down a village either. It's one of those things where we have to take some of that control back. And we can hack the hackers by, getting rid of those weeds. Those weeds are the ones that grow and become invasive and stunt your growth. You don't have to put up with that. You absolutely don't have to put up with that. So, I think of it more as like my little garden. And when I see weeds picking through, I just kind of like get rid of them. I'm good. I don't have to worry about those thoughts. There were a lot of things that happened in 2014 around the whole marriage equality thing. And I'm like, listen, it's not that I don't like you. I just don't want to hear your stupid thoughts. I could do without that. And I think if more people would do that instead of being so tolerant of people's ignorance, there are people I've unfriended on Facebook and speak to them in public. And they're like, hey, I don't hate you. I just think you're stupid. And I don't want to hear what you got to say all the time.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Other thoughts about how you are handling relationship stress, specifically. I realize that social media is definitely part of so much of our lives now, but especially if it's personal, like in real life, IRL stuff.
One way I have dealt with it, and I felt really guilty about it until I had a couple of conversations, one with my therapist and one with my husband this week, is I have been very withdrawn and I have had a lot of alone time. And, I talked to them and I engineered my life so I'd have 8 hours of alone time a day before this. And I don't have 8 hours of alone time a day. And I didn't feel guilty about working from home so that I'd have my freedom to have my own schedule. But now that someone's around, I feel very guilty and like I'm not meeting the needs of the people around me who are more social than I am. But it's that reminding myself that I'm in a pandemic and this is not optimal at all. And it's okay if I have to have alone time. If I am wired differently, that is okay.
Mm-hmm.
It really, truly is.
Thank you for that. Absolutely.
I'm wired differently from Angela. When your father was talking about the spiders, I was thinking one man's junk is another man's treasure. One thing I have been doing intentionally is reminding myself that even though Joe and I are pretty much isolating in separate parts of the house and don't see each other a lot, I have to remind myself that we're still a team helping each other. I was going to grill some ribs on our back deck this week, and we had this huge tulip poplar over it, and there were 3 gigantic spider webs between the tulip poplar and the deck, and I was not going on the back porch. These were those big garden spider type things. And so Joe came up and spent a while cleaning the back deck, knocking down spiders for me. So I cooked ribs for him. He banishes spiders for me, and we're still a team, even though it's not the way it once was.
Thanks, Paula.
And thanks, Joe, for banishing the spiders, not squashing them. I appreciate that.
I just want to echo the concept of alone time, because both Rob and I were introverts, me more so than him probably. And there was a moment a few weeks ago, I think, where we were having a conversation, and we realized that it wasn't working for us to just be in each other's space all the time. Because even when we weren't interacting with each other, we have this, I mean, I know I have this sort of scan up about, like, you know, I have to pay attention to the other person in the room. The other person's energy is affecting me, you know, and when I want to do something like, you know, write or, you know, what have you, I need to have my own headspace. So I kept saying things like, oh, I wish I could go and just be at a coffee shop, you know, and whatever. And what I was really trying to say was, can you get out of my headspace for a minute? Can we be in separate rooms? And I felt bad saying that, but I think it ultimately worked out well for us to, like, he moved his office up to the upstairs guest bedroom rather than working on the couch. And because, I mean, he wasn't bothering me exactly, but it was I needed space because I'm used to having more space.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it was important to have that conversation.
So our family has also been talking about revamping our workspace in part because of that very kind of thing. Absolutely. I hear. And I want to bring back the mission to Mars. Like, they're looking at, like, we can't cram 7 people in a tin can. They have to have enough space so they can be away from each other sometimes. And, like, if they need to do that going to Mars, then you probably need it for your household. I mean, I think it's like, one of the practices that I'm actually looking forward to, I'm doing this nature and forest therapy thing. One of the practices is going outside and finding a sit spot, finding a place where you can just sit and be. And again, this is not exactly mindfulness, but it's just being embodied in a place and observing the place and just being an observer. And I have to tell you, that's probably one of the things I'm most excited about, actually having an assignment to go. It's not being lazy because it's an assignment. I can go find a place and do nothing for 20 to 30 minutes and just be in a different place. To me, that's exciting. I know that speaks to my mental state right now. But
one thing about a sit spot also is that you find a place where you can keep going back to that same place so that you develop a connection with it and you observe it change over time. So if anybody else wants to practice it, it's a simple practice, mindful, but you also observe the passage of time as well.
Yeah. So if anyone needs that, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to say this kind of correlates with the heal part. One of the things I've found is if we pray for God to help us see those characteristics of somebody that we care about, help me see the positive characteristics, help me to be aware of the things that I appreciate. That's a prayer that usually gets answered.
Thank you for that. Absolutely. I think that's probably a good place for us to transition back into closing our worship time. Give me just a second to get that back on the screen. All right, if you don't mind closing us out, Tony. You're muted, buddy.
All right. God of life and source of meaning, we and our human communities are fearfully and wonderfully made. Help us see in others and in ourselves the image you have imprinted on us. May our relationships be sources of healing and courage.
May the peace of the Lord Christ go with you, wherever he may send you. May he guide you through the wilderness, protect you through the storm. May he bring you home rejoicing at the wonders he has shown you. May he bring you home rejoicing once again into our doors.
Thank you all for being here for worship today. I've enjoyed the discussion. Are there any announcements or things that we need to let people know about coming up? I've got 2 things. One is Wednesday night at 6:00. We have a St. Junia meeting time for prayer and mutual support. That's out in the newsletter. So if you would like to be part of that, you're welcome to join us at 6 for discussion. on Wednesday. The other thing is that we were going to have our first ecology and spirituality lab yesterday, but because it was storming, we have postponed it till this upcoming Saturday. So if you would like to do an in-person event, this is socially distanced, wear your mask. We'll be 6 feet apart, but it'll be outside. We're going to get together and do some practices related to permaculture and spirituality. And so we're calling it a laboratory because we don't have a goal like this is a community garden and we're going to feed the neighbors. No, this is just, we're going to practice some things related to how we interact with nature, and we're going to see what happens. So I would love for you to, if that's something that's appealing to you, if you need some social and outside time, I would love to see you Saturday at noon at East Lake United Methodist Church. So those are my 2 announcements. Are there other announcements or things we need to let folks know about?
I want to encourage anybody, if you're planning on voting in person, early, absentee, do it sooner rather than later. We went 2 Fridays back and we waited an hour. I have a friend who went Friday and waited 5 hours.
Oh, gee.
So please just be mindful that it's getting rough. So think about those things.
Okay, thanks for that.
Also, I think the deadline for registration is October 17th. Is it October 17th?
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure, but it is soon. Yeah,
it's 3 weeks before the election, if I'm not mistaken. So if you haven't registered, please go ahead and get registered. If you're not going to do the actual physical absentee, like Teresa said, don't mail your ballots. Do not mail your ballots. Either take it down there personally or just show up at the polls on the 3rd, like I'm going to do with my mask and hand sanitizer and can of Lysol, and just have to wait. This is really too important for us to sleep on this again. We saw what happened in 2016, and I'm visibly shaken and upset and scared about, what's coming around the corner for us.
Amen. All right. Thank you for that. All right. Well, so we're going to stop the stream. And then if we have any in-house stuff to discuss, those of you who are on Zoom, stick around. For the rest of you, thank you for tuning in, and go in peace.